So as we mentioned before, Seth so rudely interrupted us.
No.
Every firm needs to have a qualifying broker. And the only rule for a qualifying broker is that they have to be non-provisional. So now here's the thing. A qualifying broker is different than a BIC. They are two different positions. A firm needs both. Now, in most firms, the qualifying broker and the BIC are the same person. So in my firm, for example, I am the qualifying broker. And when it came time to hire a BIC, who did I choose to hire?
Leslie.
Who did I hire?
Yourself.
I hired myself as the BIC. And that's the way most firms operate. But could the qualifying broker be separate from the broker in charge?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And here's what I want to point out to you, as weird as it may seem. Could pretty much a brand new agent be a qualifying broker?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can take post licensing as quickly as you want after you get your license. Could somebody finish their post licensing in, say, 3 weeks after they got their real estate license?
Yep.
I have a friend that did that. He got his post licensing. I mean, he got his license in This is October. Are we in October? Yes. September. He got his license in June and he became a non-provisional in September.
There you go. So
No, August. I'm sorry.
once someone gets rid of the provisional status, they can open a real estate firm. They can't run it, but they can open it because they can be the qualifying broker. Because if you look on here, there's no experience required to be a qualifying broker. The experience requirement is to become a what?
Non-provisional.
Non-provision.
Oh,
To be a BIC.
A BIC.
Broker in charge, the BIC.
The experience requirement is to be a broker in charge. So here's what I want you to understand. Can a very recently licensed person open a real estate firm if they're willing to hire somebody else who has more experience to be the broker in charge of that firm?
Yes.
Yes, they absolutely can.
But at a later point, I could, if I was to do that, I could then become the broker in charge later if I wanted to.
That's
In 2
right.
years.
That's exactly right. In basically 2 years. So, Kate, if you wanted to get your license and then just knock your post licensing out right away, say you just boom, 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 you were done in 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Right.
Then you could open a real estate firm and you could say you are the qualifying broker right away. Because as soon as you're non-provisional, you can be the qualifying broker. But then the next line on the firm application is going to say, who's the broker in charge? You would have to have somebody lined up to be the broker in charge because you would not need this 2 years of full-time experience rule. Does that make
Gotcha.
sense?
Yeah.
100%. Thank you.
Yep. But you could hire somebody to be the broker in charge, and they would need to do that for at least 2 years while you accumulated the required experience, and then you could, replace them with you. And you could become the broker in charge as well.
Perfect.
Okay. And realistically, the qualifying broker, the BIC has a ton of jobs, but the qualifying broker only has one job: renew the firm's license. That's it.
And
Every
to
year, and then choose who they're going to have to be the BIC. That's it. That's the only requirement. Okay. Are we all good with that?
Yes.
Just for
Yes.
clarification, Travis.
Yes.
So once you become non-provisional, you can own a firm,
Mm-hmm.
but because you don't have the 2 years within the 5 years, you have to hire,
Somebody to run the firm.
run the firm.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
You're qualified to own it, but you're not qualified to run it.
Run it. Okay.
It's the same exact thing for a daycare. So, yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, like, there are a lot of, quite honestly, there are a lot of professions that work in this way where the owner doesn't necessarily have the expertise to do it. you know, but they allow that anyway. And in North Carolina, we're basically saying you don't need any experience to own a real estate firm. You do need a real estate license to own a real estate firm, but that's pretty much it. That's pretty much the only requirement. Get the license, and then you can own a firm.
So when you open a firm, do you get a business license on top of having a realty license? And
What do you mean a business license?
I guess, well, like, do you open up an LLC corporation?
You don't have to. That's how you choose to structure your business. You can open a firm as a sole proprietorship. You can simply say, you know, I am opening a real estate firm as a sole proprietor. There's no requirement that you create an LLC. You could, if you wanted to create an LLC, you could do that, but you could also just open a firm as a sole proprietorship, which doesn't require any sort of business structure.
They prefer LLC, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Are we all good on a qualifying broker and their role, what they do? Good. As I said, they got to be non-provisional and they have to be the owner of the firm, basically. Those are the only requirements. So let's talk about those different forms of business structures that could exist. The most common is a sole proprietorship. The day you get your real estate license, you are a sole proprietor. If you create a real estate firm and it's owned by you as an individual, guess what it's called?
Sole proprietorship.
A sole proprietorship. A sole proprietorship just means the business and the person are the same thing. The person is the business. Seth, you don't have any sort of other business structure, correct? Your business is you, right? So yes. Seth is a sole proprietor, which means when my firm compensates Seth, are we compensating some LLC or are we compensating Seth Thomas? Which one are we compensating?
The latter one.
Seth Thomas.
Seth Thomas. Because the business is Seth Thomas. That's a sole proprietorship. Now that has obvious advantages. How much work did you have to do to become Seth Thomas?
Nobody.
He already was, right? There was no form to fill out. There was no application. There was no paperwork. All he had to make sure was that Seth Thomas got a real estate license.
Yeah.
And y'all are all working on that part right now. So the advantage for sole proprietorship is it's easy. You're just kind of naturally are a sole proprietor. There's a downside to a sole proprietorship. The downside to a sole proprietorship is that if Seth made a mistake in a transaction and there was a lawsuit, he would be personally liable in that lawsuit.
Yeah.
Since he, the person, is also the business, if somebody's suing the business, what are they actually suing?
The person.
Him, the person.
Him, yes.
So the plus of a sole proprietorship is it doesn't cost you anything. There's no setting it up. There's no extra work to do. The potential downside to a sole proprietorship is that you are personally liable. And responsible for any mistakes that are made. Okay, so that's what you would need to know for test taking purposes about sole proprietorship. As far as all the decision making, well, he makes all the decisions because he is the business. There is no separate company involved. Okay, and it doesn't help him any with tax. It doesn't necessarily hurt him with taxes, but it doesn't help him
at all
with taxation. It doesn't help him with liability. Okay.
And if someone come after him, they're gonna take everything he has.
That is true. If he was sued for a business mistake, he could lose
everything.
He could lose his personal assets because the business and the person are the same thing. Okay. That also is true of partnerships. Partnerships really are the same thing as sole proprietorships, except it's more than one person. A partnership is a sole proprietorship where there just happens to be two people. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
So like as an example, a married couple who opens a business would not be called a sole proprietorship, they'd be called a partnership. You know, but they still don't have any liability protection. They still don't have any tax benefits that come along with creating a more substantial business entity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Amanda, your question, what does no shelter refer to? It means nowhere to hide if the business is sued. Think about when you hear people say, well, I'm going to sue that business. Well, if the business is Seth, then you're suing Seth personally, right? And I'm not picking on him because that's the way we all are when we first get into business. We're all sole proprietors when we first get licensed. Okay. And you have to make a decision at some point in your career if you want to stay in a position where you are your business. I mean, there are obvious pluses to having liability protection, but there are downsides to creating an LLC as well. And we're going to talk about those in just a second. Do you all see, though, why somebody might want to have something different than a sole proprietorship or a partnership? You know, why they might want to basically separate, this is the business and this is me. And this is the stuff I own personally, and this is the stuff the business owns. And if you're suing the business, you can get money from the business and stuff from the business, but you can't get my personal stuff. Do you see how somebody might want to create that division in their life?
Yeah.
Okay. That is where we get to LLCs or corporations. Corporations are sort of like the gold standard of protecting yourself. If you want to have absolute immunity from a business-related lawsuit impacting your personal life, you would create your business as a corporation. The problem with, and so the plus side of creating a corporation is this, and you don't need to worry about a bunch of what's on here. I'm going to give you the high points here for a second. You know, the plus of a corporation is it has ultimate legal protection. That's the plus. The minus, the downside, complex, expensive to set up, takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort to set up a corporation. Most people don't go this far. Most people who are in real estate don't go to the point. Now, on a test, how would you tell they were talking about a corporation? Corporations are owned by stockholders, shareholders. Most real estate agents never go to this extreme. There's one in the middle. We talked about the two extremes. Sole proprietorship, you have no protection. Corporation, you have ultimate protection, but it's really expensive to set it up. It's really complex to set it up. You have to pay a lot of money, not just once, but every single year to the North Carolina Secretary of State's office to keep your corporation going. And for a lot of people, it's the liability protection is not worth the expense of setting up a corporation. The one that's in the middle is something called an LLC. Most of you have probably heard of an LLC. Is that true? That many of you have heard of an LLC before? An LLC, or limited liability company. Well, the name tells you what the whole purpose is. Why do people set up LLCs? They want to limit their what?
Liability.
Their liability. They want to separate their business from their personal life. And when you want to do that, the best, most efficient way to do it is with an LLC. It is the most simplified form of business entity available. Now, LLCs have two groups of people that participate in them, members and managers. The reason we have this differentiation is some people who have ownership of an LLC are allowed to make decisions, and some people are not allowed to make decisions. Which group do you think can make decisions on behalf of the company?
Managers.
Managers, right? Now, could an LLC only have one person who's part of the company? Is that possible?
Yes.
And if they do, that one has to be a what?
Manager.
A manager.
Manager.
You gotta have at least one manager.
Mhm.
But if you've got two or more people involved, they could both be managers. One could be a member, one could be a manager. You know, there's no limit. There's no rule that says you can only have one manager. It just simply says you get to decide which people have which authority when you create an LLC. The plus of an LLC is it does create some liability protection. Here's the downside of an LLC. Let me see if I can show you this. And I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but I'm going to do it again just as a reminder. Right now, in fact, Leslie has a closing today, right? Seth, didn't she mention that? I think she has a closing today, right? All right, so here's what the chain of a transaction looks like right now for Leslie. She has a client, and that client hires TravTalks Real Estate. Okay? And TravTalks Real Estate has an agreement with Leslie Helton. Okay? Now, when the transaction closes, commission's going to get paid from here, from the client down to where? Where does the money go first? TravTalks Real Estate. So let me ask you a question. Does TravTalks Real Estate have to have a real estate license?
Yes.
Since it's going to be paid a commission.
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody with me on that? So we got a license. And then commission is going to get paid from TravTalks Real Estate down to Leslie Helton. Does she have to have a license?
Yes.
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 Now, TravTalks Real Estate is a company. So do companies get broker licenses or do companies get firm licenses?
Firm license.
Firm.
So this is a firm license. And Leslie Helton has a what?
License.
Broker.
Provisional license.
A broker license.
Broker license.
Except I've lied to you when I set this up. This is not how Leslie's commissions work.
Yeah,
because Leslie came to me several years ago. This is how, this is how Seth's commissions work.
Okay.
Leslie has a company, so her company is paid.
Leslie
have a firm license.
Came to me several years ago and said, I want you to pay all my commissions to NatWin Real Estate. And then I assume, I don't care, it's none of my business, NatWin Real Estate will compensate Leslie Helton. Mm. Does that make a sense for everybody?
Yep.
Yeah. Now, we already established that Leslie Helton is going to have a broker license down here, and she does. Do you see a gap, though, in this flow? Is there another stop for the money along the way?
NatWin Real Estate.
Yes.
Does this need to be licensed?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, there needs to be a real estate license in here, and it's not a person. So what kind of real estate license does it need to have?
A firm.
Firm.
License.
A firm license. That's a whole nother license the real estate commission gets to collect an annual fee on right there, just because that LLC exists.
Okay. She covered.
So does the real estate commission like it when you set up an LLC?
Of course.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, they do, because they get another application fee and another annual license renewal fee. Does this license right here have to be renewed every year?
Yes.
Does
Yes.
this license have to be renewed every
Yes.
year? Does this license have to be renewed every year?
Yes.
Yes.
Every single time. Every single time. Does that make
So it's
sense for
kinda like a
everybody?
barrier. It's kind of like a barrier between Leslie and the client. So something.
It's another barrier between Leslie and the client, because if Leslie makes a mistake in a transaction, now, here's why creating that LLC matters to her. If she screws up and the client says, I'm gonna sue you, Leslie's gonna say, bring it. Because she's gonna say, I didn't have an agreement with you. You had an agreement with who? Who's the client have to sue?
That when real estate.
Client didn't even have an agreement with them.
Trav Talks.
They got to sue Trav Talks. And then Trav Talks is going to say, well, I'm so sorry that a mistake was made, but Trav Talks, we really passed on all the responsibility to another company who handled that transaction on our behalf. See, so really who you need to talk to is Nat Wynn Real Estate. Is this client that's mad likely to run out of gas before they get all the way down here? The more levels you put in this thing, do you see why this provides liability protection?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because the client's like 18 degrees away from being able to sue Leslie.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
This is why people set up LLCs, because it just gives another layer of insulation between you, the person, and that client who's way up there if there's a problem. Can we all agree if a lawsuit is filed, you want to be as far away as possible from it?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just another way to put another layer of insulation between you and that lawsuit. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. Good. That is why people ultimately decide to set up LLCs. Now, there's a cost involved. You have to pay a fee to the Secretary of State's office, and you got to pay obviously the real estate commission a fee for a real estate license for that firm. And going back to that idea, Nat Wynn Real Estate is a firm, so it has to have a qualifying broker and a broker in charge. Well, guess who's the qualifying broker and broker in charge of Nat Wynn Real Estate? Leslie is. She created that firm. She named herself the qualifying broker and the broker in charge, and now her commissions all get paid to it. And that's that.
That's why.
So Travis, she couldn't get the LLC, well, the firm license until she was able to be a broker, right? I mean, not a broker, a BIC.
A BIC, for the most part, that is true.
Okay.
For the most part, that is true.
Unless she hires somebody else.
Unless she hires somebody else, exactly right. She would get somebody else to serve that function, right?
Okay.
So for most of you, you're going to be a sole proprietor for at least how long?
2 years.
For at least 2 years, for most of you. Okay. What are the BIC responsible for supervising? We talked about this a lot already. Obviously, directly supervised provisional brokers. These are going to be slides that we go through very quickly, by the way, because we've already talked about these responsibilities a lot throughout the agency section of the class. None of this, don't worry about for the test. I'm not saying these aren't important things. I'm just saying you're not going to be tested on these things in particular, so don't worry about that. Obviously, the BIC's job is to supervise what goes on in the firm. So does the BIC need to know what you're doing in a transaction? If they're responsible for the activities of the firm, they need to know what's going on. They need to be involved in what's going on. especially anything agency related. Make sure that that they have written policies and procedures so that you can follow them. But again, none of this is going to show up on the actual test as far as that goes. So this is just kind of an overview of what the job is for the broker in charge. By the way, any of you that have big dogs, you've been there and seen this when you come home one day. This is so our house at certain points in our life. And that's exactly the expression on their face too when you find them like that. They're just like, yeah, I did it. So what? I'm big. Big dogs don't care. They really don't.
They don't.
They don't care. You
They're
get
like,
mad at them all
"Put me
you
out."
want to. They just look at you like, dude, I'm bigger than you. Whatever.
They're
So you
like
gonna
big
put me out?
babies.
Yeah, I did it. Yeah, what are you gonna do about it? I had one. He's laying over here now on the sofa in my office. When he was much, much younger, when he was a puppy, he ate a leather sofa, the whole thing. While we were at work one day, the whole thing, like nothing but springs and wood left. And he was very proud of himself. Very proud of himself.
He got a
And then
lot
I
of
thought,
humps that
and then
day.
I thought, I'm gonna fix you. You're gonna get locked in the backyard from now on. You don't have freedom to come in the house anymore during the day. So put a dog house in the backyard and lock him outside. Close the dog door up. You know what he ate next? The house. He chewed the siding off the side of it and don't care. Just looked at me like, yeah, I did it. What are you gonna do about it?
It was a pit bull?
No, he's a Weimaraner. So the big silver dog, about 120 pounds worth.
He's huge.
Yeah, and, well, they're big ones. They're big ones.
Yeah, because my Roddy's
Is
like
that
130.
Yeah, they're big ones. But make sure your BIC is actively supervising you. That's the big thing here. To me, the big takeaway is once you get in the business, make sure they are actively supervising you and knowing what's going on. They have to be responsible for your activities. So that's only fair. This question, this is one the Real Estate Commission wanted us to ask you previously. I keep asking them, do we need to take this out? Because now doesn't everybody work primarily from home? In the past, the Real Estate Commission took the stance that provisional brokers couldn't really work primarily from home because they were supposed to be directly supervised. But of course now the world is a very different place. And so I think the answer is, yeah, they can now, as long as the BIC has come up with ways I would say yes, as long as they have adequate supervision. Yes, a provisional can do most of their work from home as long as they have adequate supervision. Now, this does pick back up with information that will be tested for sure. Can a provisional broker be affiliated with more than one firm? What do you think the answer to that question is? Can a provisional broker be affiliated with more than one firm?
no.
That is a flat no.
No.
Only one BIC, one firm if you're provisional. Can non-provisional brokers be affiliated with more than one firm?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And that is yes with the verbal permission
Of each BIC.
of each BIC. With the verbal permission and knowledge of each BIC. I don't know why they don't require written permission. I think it's silly. I would personally have it in writing, but they say that verbal permission is okay.
Verbal permission without ever turning it into written. Is that what you're saying?
Right. The rule doesn't specify the permission has to be in writing. So, if that ever showed up on a test, verbal permission is enough. As long as you have the understanding and verbal permission of your broker, your various brokers in charge, then that's enough. And it's not hard to find out, you know, if somebody has multiple brokers in charge, because if you go to the Real Estate Commission's, you know, website and search for someone's, I think we did that in class. Was that with you all, or was that with the night class where I went and I searched Seth's license?
Yeah, that wasn't with us.
Did it.
That was the night class. I've seen the video for that.
That was not with you all?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Okay. So if you ever want to know who someone's broker in charge is, you can always go to ncrec.gov and you can search for licensees and type brokers. And we'll do Seth, even though there's like 40 bazillion Thomases here in the list.
I could totally give you my license number.
Way too common of a name. All right, here we go. Thomas. There he is. So when you pull someone up, as you see right there, it will tell you what firms they are affiliated with and who their broker in charge is, what the address is of their firm. You know, it also tells you how long they've had their license. So look at that. You just hit 3 years last month, right?
I think we were in class on that day.
Yeah, you just hit 3 years last month. That's not very long at all. But you could also, if you wanted to, click on the firm's information there, and it would bring up like the firm location. And notice here, it shows you not only who the BIC is, but who the qualifying broker is. So if there was, would this be a good way to find out if there was somebody who owned the firm, but they weren't running the firm? Could you discover that pretty quickly? Because if you look at the firm's information and you see someone listed as the BIC, but not listed as the qualifying broker, you'd be like, okay, well, the qualifying broker, that's the person who owns the firm, but the person who runs the firm is this broker in charge down here.
What did level B mean on the previous page?
B means broker, non-provisional.
Okay.
If he was provisional, it would say PB.
PB.
Provisional broker.
Okay.
I don't know why on the test they insist on using the verbiage non-provisional broker, because in the real world, we just say provisional broker, broker. You know, but on the test, they insist on that non-provisional broker. But B just means he's gotten rid of the provisional status.
Provisional. Okay.
And if you notice, the most important word on the screen right there is he is what?
Active.
Active, which means he can get
paid.
What? Paid.
So when it says to be a broker in charge eligible, it says no, but he is.
No, he's not eligible until he sends the form in to the Real Estate Commission.
Gotcha.
He meets the criteria.
But he has to send in information.
But he has to send the form in basically notifying the Real Estate Commission that he meets the criteria. If he wanted to be a BIC, he would have to send a form into the Real Estate Commission that says, I've read your rule, I meet this criteria, I want BIC eligibility. And they would give it to him based on that. Okay.
That makes sense. I was curious about that too.
Yep, that's what that means. So, all right, so non-provisional brokers can have more than one broker in charge. This slide is a good one that sort of sums up or wraps up everything that a BIC is responsible for in North Carolina to make sure everybody's license is active and current. So active means they have completed all of their education, they've done everything right. Current just means they've done what?
Paid the
renewal fee. Good. The BIC is responsible for keeping all of the agency agreements and the disclosures, so the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure and all of the agency agreements on file. The BIC is responsible for all advertising done in the name of the firm. The BIC is responsible for the transaction files and the trust account. The way I always remember this and the way I have taught people that they can help remember this is 3 A's and 2 T's. It's active licenses. So active licenses, agency documents, advertising, and then the 2 T's, transaction files. So transactions and trust accounts. Those were the 5 things that a BIC is responsible for, 3 A's and 2 T's. Is everybody active? Where are all the agency agreements? What does the advertising look like? Those are the 3 A's. And then the 2 T's are the transaction files and the trust account. That was the way I trained myself to memorize the things that a broker in charge was responsible.
That is a great way to remember it. And also you could remember it like BICs have to wear that on them like a tat on their body.
A's and T's like a tat, right?
So the transaction files, that's pretty much making sure that they're live with what? Is it 3 years from the date of closing?
3 years from the last time we do something for that client, which could be closing or it could be after closing if we happen to be like holding money until after closing or something. But the time period is 3 years from the end of the transaction.
End of the transaction.
Yeah. 3 years.
So if we go 2 years, 5 months, and then any little transaction against that client, it starts the 3 year over again.
Right. If something else were to come up about that transaction, it would restart the 3 year cycle. Exactly. So like say the transaction closed 2 years ago, but all of a sudden you just got they had a problem with the water heater and they contacted you again and said, hey, can you go back and look at our home warranty and see, does that cover us? That would restart the 3 years because it's 3 years from the last time you worked on their behalf. Okay. Good. Don't worry so much about the non-resident commercial broker's license. I don't think you're going to be tested on that, so I'm going to mark that out. I know y'all hate it when I eliminate stuff, right? Don't y'all? That drives you crazy, right? You want more extra. I mean, I can find some extra weird rules and throw in here if you want to.
Absolutely.
Nope, already confused enough. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I don't think you need to work. Just basically know that there is a way for commercial agents who are out of state to come into the state, even if they don't have a North Carolina license. They have a process they can do that. It's really not necessary anymore, but there is a process for it.
And is that for those that have, like, for example, like billing Walmarts or Sam Clubs or stuff like that?
I mean, and the idea is that if you're working with commercial transactions, they really don't care about state lines. Like if you're representing Walmart, you might be representing today in Raleigh and tomorrow in Richmond and the day after in Atlanta, and so you really need the ability to cross state lines if you're representing that kind of a client. So most states have a little bit of leeway when it comes to commercial brokers. And we are one of those that has that leeway. So these slides that deal with the commercial non-resident license, all of those you can eliminate for your purposes in the pre-licensing class. It might be something that would be of interest once you have a license, but not necessarily in the pre-licensing class. Trust account. We talk a lot about trust accounts. Now we want to talk about what one is and what are the rules around a trust account. First of all, a trust account is just a checking account. It's not a special account. It's not, you don't go to the bank and say, I want to open a trust account. They're going to look at you and go, you want to open what? Huh? what you say is, I want to open a checking account, because a trust account is a checking account. There are certain rules that it has to follow, but other than that, it's just a checking account. We all right with that? It's just a basic business checking account. That's all it is. First rule, it has to be located in an FDI insured bank. Only banks have FDIC insurance. Credit unions do not have FDIC. How many of you, when you go to the bank, you go to the drive-through, you go to the teller, you see that little placard in the window that says FDIC, right? But right beside, it's usually displayed on the counter if you go in the bank, or in the window if you go to the drive-up teller. You see that little FDIC placard that's sitting there. That stands for Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Basically, deposits that are made in a bank are insured by the United States federal government. So you don't have to worry if the bank gets robbed. If the bank gets robbed, your money is still safe, because they have insurance through the federal government that would cover your money. Does that make sense for everybody? So do you understand why the Real Estate Commission would say you need to hold somebody else's money in a bank? Because if the bank got robbed, they would be guaranteed to still give you that money, because it's insured by the federal government. That's why they have the requirement. Credit unions do not have this insurance. Credit unions do have insurance. I'm not telling you to panic if you have your money in a credit union, but they don't have FDIC insurance. And so it has to be a bank. That's the first rule. Your trust account can only be held in a bank. The second rule is that all the paperwork for this checking account that you open, the deposit slips, the checks themselves, the statements that come on a monthly basis, have to have the words trust account on there, or escrow account. One of the two has to be on there. That's so you can't play dumb later on when you stole the money out of the trust account and go, oh gosh, I just had the wrong checkbook. That was an innocent mistake. No, it wasn't, because it says right there on it, trust account. That's why they force you to label your trust account with that verbiage, so that you don't have that excuse later on. Is everybody all right with that?
Yeah, Travis, can you explain to everybody how they verbally tell the banking how to put that trust or escrow account on their accounts? Because if you just open up an account, they just open it personal, so you need to make sure that you specify.
Yeah, you just go to the bank and you say, I want to open a checking account. You say, okay, what's the name on the account? And here's what you say. On the top line, I want you to put my name, and on the next, or my company name, whichever it is. And on the next line, right underneath that, I want it to say trust account. That's all you got to tell them at the bank.
Kate asked why call it trust versus escrow.
They mean the same thing. You can call it either one. Your choice, whichever word you like better. If you think escrow is a fancier sounding word, then name it an escrow account. If you like trust better, then call it a trust account. Either one works.
Heard that.
For as far as the North Carolina Real Estate Commission is concerned. Okay. So Kate likes escrow. So there you go. It's because she watches Selling Sunset, and they always say they're opening escrow.
That's exactly right, actually.
I know you. I'm there. I'm picking up what you're putting down. I got you. Okay. The big one that they like to test on a lot, and people struggle with this on the test because they think, oh, the Real Estate Commission can't do that. Yes, they can. If you're going to have a trust account as a real estate agent in North Carolina, then basically the bank has the right to turn your records over to the Real Estate Commission at any given time. And they don't have to tell you. So if somebody from the Real Estate Commission contacts your bank and says, I need to see Charlene's trust account records, the bank has to send those records to the Real Estate Commission. So could they know you were funny with the money before they even reach out to you as a licensee?
Sure.
Yeah. If they were investigating you Here's my general rule of thumb. If you get a letter from the real estate commission, they already know you're guilty. They already done looked you up. You know, they may say they're conducting an investigation, but reading between the lines, we've conducted an investigation and you done messed up. That's what the letter says. Not really, but that's pretty much, okay. This last one is also a good target for the test. I would say this one is a one that they throw on the test that people struggle with. It's easy to think of a trust account as an account where you can't put any of your own money, but that's not actually what the rule says. The rule says that you can keep up to $100 of your personal funds in a trust account. You don't have to keep $100. You don't have to keep any of your own personal funds. Could you keep a balance of 0 in your trust account?
Yes. You
can. Here's the danger, and this is why they let you keep money in there. Could the bank close your account at any time if you have a 0 balance in it?
Mm-hmm.
And that has happened. We've had people that get ready to go make a deposit in their trust account, and the bank goes, oh, this account's been closed. And now they're stuck with this money that they're supposed to be holding in trust, and they don't have a trust account. That's a problem. So to prevent that from happening, the Real Estate Commission basically says, okay, you can put $100 up to a maximum of $100 of your own personal money in that trust account, just to make sure that they hold the account open, to make sure that if they charge you like an account maintenance fee, there's money there for that, but that's it. No more than $100 of your own personal money can be kept in your trust account. Did somebody have a question? I felt like I heard somebody for a second.
It sounded like I heard something in the background, but I think they muted themselves.
Okay. So these are just the basic rules of having the actual account. As far as the BIC and maintaining records, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. As far as the BIC and maintaining records, as Charlene and Sharon asked just a second ago, how long do the records have to be kept? 3 years from the last time we provided any services for that client. So you have to keep all your records, but you don't have to keep them forever. If you're looking at a transaction, don't look at how old the records are. Look at when you finished working for the client. And if you finished working for them more than 3 years ago, what can you do with those records?
Throw them away.
You can throw them away, discard them, destroy them. Can you keep them if you want to?
Yes.
Sure, you can. You can. You can keep them. But you can also destroy them if it's been more than 3 years since you worked for that particular client.
Now, Travis, I have a lawyer friend who says he has to keep all real estate transaction files up to 10 years.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's different for them.
They have a different set of rules. That is correct.
Yeah, Charlene. I used to work for a firm, and in the records department, a lot of the times what they'll do is they'll have a completely off-site records building that they have, because it costs a lot of money for them to pull records and destroy records and turn into a lot of records.
Yeah, and so that they have different rules for record retention than we do. There are different rules for record retention for every profession. Ours from the Real Estate Commission just happens to be 3 years. 3 years. Somebody asked me, I probably shouldn't even tell y'all this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Just come on, show you how powerful it can be to know the rules. I have a good friend in North Carolina who has a real estate license, and he called me panicked one day. He had gotten the dreaded brown envelope from the Real Estate Commission. If you get a brown envelope from the Real Estate Commission, it's going to be a bad day. Okay? I'm just going to tell you in advance. They don't send you a happy birthday card in a brown envelope. If it comes in a brown envelope and it says North Carolina Real Estate Commission on it, it's bad. That's an investigation. And he had gotten the brown envelope, never had one, panicked. And he said, Travis, I don't even know what to do. I mean, they're asking me about this transaction, and it was like 6 years ago. And I said, back up. It was how long ago? Oh, it's like 6 years ago, and I have a hard time. I'm pulling out all my files, and I'm trying to remember what happened in this transaction, and I don't think it went down that way. And I said, here's what your response is to the Real Estate Commission. Per North Carolina Real Estate Commission rule, I no longer possess any records relating to this transaction as they were destroyed after I reached the 3-year mark from providing brokerage service to this client. He said, really? I said, send it to him and see what you get back. He called me like a month later and said, I just got a letter from the Real Estate Commission. I said, what did it say? They said, my case has been dismissed. I said, you're welcome. Is that not an example of using their own rule to the fullest?
Yeah.
If they have a rule that says you only have to keep the records for 3 years, and they send you a letter asking you about something that happened 6 years ago, what's your answer? I don't know what happened 6 years ago. I'm only required to know what happened 3 years ago. Just saying. Just saying. Okay? So knowing these rules is important. It's huge. It's huge. Okay? As far as notifying the Real Estate Commission if you make any changes with relate to like your address, your name, anything like that, you have 10 days to notify the Real Estate Commission. If you change offices, if you change firms, if you change BICs, if you move, any change at all to your license record, you have 10 days. That could possibly show up on the license exam. You have 10 days to do that with the Real Estate Commission. I don't think we need to explain that any deeper. Any change at all, you got 10 days to notify the Real Estate Commission. And that would include like a change of where your trust account was being held. Just kind of sum up this idea of a trust account. It is not necessary to have one. There is no requirement that we have a trust account in place, but there are certain areas of real estate where you just can't do it without a trust account because you can't get away without having or handling money. If you're handling money, you've got to have a trust account for the most part. So like property management, rent, tenant security deposits, all of that's going to have to go into a trust account. As far as provisional brokers handling money, if a provisional broker is handling money, then they've got to deliver that money immediately to their broker in charge. That's a provisional broker. If a provisional broker, yes, Charlene, you got to memorize all the code numbers and statute numbers. What do you? No, they're not going to test you on these code numbers and statute.
Just lost it.
No, they're not. You know. You mean you can't say 58A-103? You don't know? I mean, gosh, what else have you got to do with your life? Just memorize all of that. No, you do not need to know the license law numbers. They're just there for reference purposes. But provisional brokers have to turn funds over immediately to their broker in charge. How long does the broker in charge have to get this money deposited? That's a different question. So if the question is, money hits your hand and you're a provisional broker, how long do you have to get it to the BIC? Immediately. How long does the BIC have to get it, though, into the trust account? And that is 3 banking days from the time it is received by the firm. Now, this is why the provisional broker's got to get it turned over immediately. Is the BIC's clock running from the moment it hits the provisional broker's hand?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it says we've got 3 banking days from the time the firm has received the money. Well, the provisional broker is part of the firm. So you want to know how to make an enemy of your BIC. You sit on that check for 2 or 3 days and then go hand it to them, and they got to drop everything they're doing and run and race to the bank because they don't have any time left on their 3 days because you've been sitting on the check. They will be very upset with you. Okay, so the firm has a total of 3 banking days to get those funds deposited into a trust or escrow account. So like if you're a property manager and rent checks come in on the 1st, and the 1st happens to be on a Monday, okay, you would have to have them in the bank by Thursday, because Tuesday the 2nd would be day 1, Wednesday the 3rd would be day 2, Thursday the 4th would be day 3, and that's when they would have to be deposited into the trust account, no later than. Everybody all right with that?
Mm-hmm.
So you got 3 banking days to get that money into the bank. And you don't have to wait. You know, Kate said it gives her anxiety to think of it laying around. Yeah, there's no rule that says you need to wait 3 days. You can, the best course of action is to get it deposited immediately. You know, I'm of the firm opinion that now with technology being what it is, if you're going to have a trust account and collect money on a regular basis, you should probably have a check scanner right there in your office where you can just do it remotely and you don't have to physically go to the bank anymore. That's just my opinion. I think that's the easier way to handle it. And we're going to stop right there for today on this topic. I don't want to go into handling funds for delivery because I think it might muddy the waters that we just covered. We'll come back to that. We're going to revisit this next, and really there's not much left of license law after this, but I think that's a good stopping point with it because we've, number 1, covered a lot, and number 2, this next little section can kind of get in your brain and do battle with something that we just learned.